If you're using the SonicWall and you're not using Geo-IP, you should be. Today we're going over just the basics of Geo-IP, what the benefits are to it, and how to set it up. So follow along and you should get to know a bit more about your SonicWall and how Geo-IP works. First things first, get logged into your SonicWall. And there's two different ways you can do this. You can either go in through NSM or through the SonicWall logon page. I'd recommend doing it directly through the SonicWall. NSM works like some of the time. If you've had any experience with NSM, you probably realize that sometimes when you deploy the changes that you've made, they say they deploy, but they do not show up on the device. And I found Geo-IP is one of the particular services that don't seem to work very well with NSM. So it might depend on the update that you're on with your SonicWall, but I would just recommend logging in. We're in here now. We're going to want to go to Policies at the top right, Security Services on the left, and then Geo-IP Filter. For us, we have it turned on, but by default it is off, and you're going to want to turn it on, and then you have two options. You can either do all connections or Firewall Rule Based connections. So I generally recommend Firewall Rule Based connections. The reason for that, if you're using all connections, it's all connections. It's inbound and outbound. So let's just say hypothetically we go to countries here, and you set it up like us, and you block everything other than Canada and the United States. This seems like a good idea. We don't want Russia or anywhere else being able to get into our network. But with all connections, it's also get out from your network. So let's say you're going to a website that's in the Netherlands or some other country, it will be blocked. And that's the same for data services. So if you have some sort of app that relies on a server outside of your network, as long as it's within the allowed countries, it's fine. But let's say they have an outage within your country, so they just move it over to India, for example, just for the time being. It's gone. Your data will not be available until that gets moved back, or you allow that country, or do like a custom list or something like that. So keep that in mind. We're going to go back to settings, and you can enable logging. I would recommend it, but it depends on how savvy you are. I would maybe just leave it off, and if you feel like or you think that the Geo-IP is screwing with something, then turn it back on. It, like everything, logging will take resources, so if you have logging going on everywhere, it can slow down your firewall. So, totally up to you if you want to turn it on or off. It doesn't really matter. Now that we have Geo-IP enabled, I just want to give a quick demonstration of what would happen if we turned on all connections and how frustrating it could be. So, we're just going to open up a new tab here and go to mail.ru, which is a popular Russian mail place, I guess. So, we'll close that out. It can load. And then we're going to go to policies again, which is where we are, access rules. I've got an access rule, which is host to Russia. So it's coming from LAN, and you're trying to get to WAN, so just trying to get to the internet, coming from my IP addresses. And then there's a security profile, it's custom, and then Russia. And I'm going to enable this, save. I'll try and go to mail.ru again. And nothing. It's blocked. Which is great. I'm glad people can't get here. But if it was a resource that was required, or the website server kind of just temporarily moved somewhere and now it doesn't work, that's going to be very frustrating to manage within an organization, especially if you're an organization of a few hundred people. If it's like a one-man shop, okay, you got to know what's happening, you can fix it. But if one person just for some reason can't get to a website that they need to get to, it's going to create a lot more support tickets than you necessarily want. So generally the way we'd recommend doing it, as I mentioned before, is not blocking it, blocking all connections. You want to do it on a rule-based connection. So we'll just turn this rule back off. Perfect. So let's just go through the proper process for making a rule. So you're going to go here and add, and let's say we're kind of doing remote access. You call it remote, and this would be from, if you're coming from WAN and you're wanting to get to LAN, and then you put in your port that you're coming in on, and you'd allow it. But you'd go to security profiles, and then you would go enable, and then you can just use the global settings. You don't need to customize it because what you've set in global are what you want. And then you can click add, and you're done, you're locked down. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for remote access. This is not the way you should be locking down your remote access. You should be using something like remote desktop gateway or something else. Don't just open up ports to the internet and let people come in if it's in the country that you're in. That's just a terrible idea. But you can see that you can at least, let's say you were using a remote desktop gateway, not everybody in the world should be able to get to your remote desktop gateway. You can at least lock that down a little bit to the country that you're in. So it is an improvement. The downside to using the rule-based connections is if somebody's setting up the rules and they forget to turn it on, it's not on. So that is a downside. Make sure you're training your staff to turn that function on and everyone will be happy. So it's pretty straightforward. That's the basics of Geo-IP. If you have any questions or would like us to manage your firewall, just either leave a comment below or reach out to us and we'd be happy to chat. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.